Hey everybody, how's it going? I hope everyone's doing well. So I'm back today with another video talking about my existing CD collection. So you will recall the last existing CD collection video I talked about Enslaved, the albums that I own. So we're still continuing with E today. Just to let you know, next in the alphabet is actually Enthroned, but some of you may recall that I did a ranking discographies video of Enthroned last year. So I'll leave a link in the description so you can go and have a look at that if you're curious to check it out. You know, that's a Belgian black metal band, one of my favorites. So that's already been covered in that video. So you can go and watch it in that separate link. But what I'm doing today is continuing after Enthroned. So I've actually got more albums than usual to talk about today. So I'm going to try and move through these a bit faster and we'll see how it goes. So 8 albums and it's a really mixed bag, very eclectic today. So hopefully there's something for everyone. Anyway, I won't waste any more time, we'll get straight into it. So next in the alphabet, first album I'm going to talk about today. This is of course Entombed with Wolverine Blues. So everyone's probably familiar with Entombed, legendary Swedish death metal band, and they were responsible for forging what's known as that Swedish sound in terms of the buzzsaw down-tuned guitars, which was followed by a lot of other bands such as Dismember. This album came out in 1993, certainly wasn't their first. They tore onto the death metal scene with their first 2 albums, Clandestine and Left Hand Path. Most people consider those the most legendary, but actually for me this is my favorite. And the reason why is I first heard this in 1993, which was the year I was discovering all this extreme music like death metal. So this was the first album by them I actually heard. And so it's got a lot of nostalgic value, but I remember in Utopia Records, they used to always play the new releases, and I remember them cranking this, you know, on the system in the shop, and people nodding their heads in approval, and I was thinking, wow, this is amazing, because unlike other death metal bands, which I had only just discovered, which were a lot more extreme, you know, like Cannibal Corpse and so on, this was a lot groovier, in a sense, groovier and catchier, and this was the first release where it sort of, they forged that sound known as death and roll, where it's sort of like a catchy death metal with a rock and roll groove, but excellent stuff. Still down-tuned, heavy and aggressive, but there's just so many brilliant songs on this album. Literally, I've got more favorite songs than the ones I dislike, and I don't really dislike any. There's just a couple which don't stand out as much, but yeah, brilliant album. I loved it then, I still love it now and really enjoy it. So some of my favorite tracks on this would be Rotten Soil. So many fantastic moments in that song, including the sample, Wake Up You Little Shit, We Got Company, which is always funny. But then there's other moments in the song you can't wait for, like Welcome to the Real World before the guitar solo, and also some other funny lyrics like Can you feel it itch, can you feel it so divine when blood is pissing down your spine? And you know, the screechy distorted guitars is just excellent. Wolverine Blues is just heavy as balls, and I really love that line, I've got an appetite like a war, screamed by vocalist LG Petrov. He was an amazing vocalist. Rest in peace, sadly, he passed away a couple of years ago. Then Demon is a great song, just that primal scream at the beginning, like that's another moment on this album that I just can't wait for. Like, you know, you go, oh yes, this part's coming, it's excellent. Great lyrics in that song, and I also love the guitar solo and that drumming bit, like like, it's just like excellent, really good stuff. Contempt is another great song, as is Full of Hell. You know, that opening line, I've got a 24-lane highway going straight through my mind. You know, all these memorable parts of the song. Great solo in Full of Hell as well. Yeah, Blood Song is good. Hollow Man is great. Yeah, the only 2 songs I don't like on this quite as much as the others are I Master and Heavens Die. Not to say that they're bad tracks, but it's just like they're the 2 which don't stand out to me as much. And it ends with the legendary Out of Hand, which is just classic. You know, again, it's got that funny sample at the beginning, and the lyrics are hilarious. Like, it's so aggressive and pissed off, that song. You know, lines like 1 × 1 = 9, your make-believe reality is full of shit, and Jesus Christ, Lord of Flies, in disguise, fuck. You know, like, it's just so many classic moments, musically and lyrically. I love this album. So I'll just show you the booklet. So it's got these kind of calligraphy lyrics, which were done by Alex Hellard, a member of the band. And he also did the scripting for the Murder Squad albums, at least the first one, I think. But yeah, I know a lot of people like to hate this album in the sense they say, oh, it's commercial and selling out. Bollocks. Like, it's just moving in a catchier direction, and I have no problems with that. And then I also think that later albums were also good in that vein, like To Ride, Shoot Straight, and Speak the Truth, songs like Damn Deal Done. But yes, Entombed, essential death metal, and don't worry or don't be fooled by people's comments that you're not allowed to like this album. It's awesome, heavy, and catchy. So that's Entombed with Wolverine Blues. All right, now moving to another Swedish band, but a complete change of style. I have spoken about this one before in a collection update, so I will be brief. But this is Europe with 1982 to 1992. So for most people, Europe probably need no introduction. You know, the melodic hard rock group from Sweden, which were most famous for the song and album. Probably the most famous song is The Final Countdown, also Rock the Night. Now, I know a lot of people in the extreme metal scene, again, would probably be disgusted with me showing this, but I'm from a certain generation, like when in my pre-teen years, that was the 80s, and that's when, you know, music on MTV was very popular. So this was sort of the soundtrack to my youth. Bands like this, you know, like hard rock, sort of quite commercial hard rock bands, but then it was a gateway to metal music. And yeah, it just brings great nostalgic memories back of the 80s, growing up in the 80s and everything. But you also have to just admit, I think, if you're an open-minded person, you've got to admit that this is like a good band. I know maybe that's subjective from my point of view, but yeah, good melodic hard rock / hair metal. And they had a really unique sound, especially with Joey Tempest's voice, but just that Swedish style and melody, really catchy songs. And I love most of the tracks on this. It's got all of the hits. Some of my favorites would be Stormwind. That's probably my favorite Europe track of all time. So atmospheric, it's great. Also, Open Your Heart is good. Dreamer, The Final Countdown, of course, a classic song. Rock the Night is another, you know, hard rock classic, brilliant song. I love that. Also, it features the power ballad Carrie, which is, you know, it's a bit sappy, but it is a good song. Cherokee, brilliant song. Like, that's such a powerful song. Nice use of keyboards in that as well. And yeah, Ready or Not. And oh, sorry, and the opening track, In the Future to Come, is great. For me, as is the case with a lot of these 80s bands, I didn't quite as much like the style in the 90s. So because it's sort of, they were changing their sound, you know, in order to adapt to the changing musical climate, but sometimes it didn't always work out. Like, I don't really like the song Prisoners in Paradise and I'll Cry for You. So like those later albums from the early 90s, I don't like so much, but all of the 80s stuff is classic. Yeah, so if you're not familiar with this band or you don't know their music well, this would obviously be a good starting point. However, I remember for a family member, I once bought a double CD compilation of Europe for them, and that's got like twice as many songs from the 80s. That's brilliant, but nevertheless, this is a good starting point. So, yep, just showing pictures of the band, and it's got, I think, yeah, some kind of history, like a biography, lots of pictures of the band. Yeah, so a massive booklet. Yeah, so a very good starting point for Europe. So, you know, I'm just honest with myself. I know a lot of people say, oh, you're not allowed to like this. Crap. No. Yeah, I'm just honest with myself. I really like this. So yeah, great melodic hard rock. This is Europe with 1982 to 1992, a greatest hits compilation. Okay, so up next, this is another album by Europe. The only other one I own on CD. This is Start From the Dark, which came out in 2001, I think. By the way, I also own two of their most classic albums, but they're on vinyl. They'll come up soon. They are Wings of Tomorrow and The Final Countdown, probably my favorite albums by Europe. So this one, this came out, this was after the band broke up in the 90s, you know, because of grunge being flavor of the month and everything, but then this was their comeback album in the early 2000s. You might recall, if you've been watching my channel for a while, I included this in my 10 terrible albums in your collection thread, and to be honest, I think I was being a bit harsh with that. Like, this album is certainly not terrible, but to me, it's just not as good as the 80s material. So it still retains that sort of melodic hard rock, hair metal sound, that Swedish Europe sound, but the difference is they started down tuning on this album. You know, I think that was to keep up with the times. That's the hard thing when you're a commercially successful band, you sort of have to move with the times to stay relevant in a sense. Or, you know, whereas if you're an underground band, you can keep releasing whatever material you want and you don't have to compromise. But sometimes when bands do compromise, the result is not very good. So like, this album is, you know, I said I included it in the terrible albums video, but I don't think it's terrible. I just think it's, for me, it's a bit lackluster. And I know people might say, how's your band going? But I don't have one. But the point is, I have to be honest about how I feel about an album. And this one doesn't really do it for me that much. You know, like a lot of the songs are okay, or, you know, like you say, yeah, pretty good, but that's about the best I can say about it, really. However, there are some really excellent songs, like the opening track, Got to Have Faith. I really like that song. It's very good. Just consulting my notes here. Yeah, and also the title track, Start From the Dark, is very good. I didn't like that one so much in the beginning, but it has grown on me. Flames is a pretty good song as well, and the song Hero, that's a depressing power ballad, but musically it's not bad. And Wake Up Call is a good song as well. That's got an atmospheric verse and a catchy heavy chorus, and it's sort of returning to those Europe roots, which is great. The other songs which are also pretty good, Sucker is a pretty catchy song, as well as America, or My America. Yeah, so like I said, in general, most of the songs I would say are okay or pretty good, but then there's a handful which I think are really good, but they are in the minority. So not a terrible album, but just not a brilliant album for me. So I don't listen to this one that often, but those 3 or 4 tracks which I really do enjoy, I like them a lot. So, yep. Just show you the booklet. So all of the band members and the lyrics. Again, with music like this, you don't really need the lyrics because you can understand the vocals when they're sung. But yeah, so actually a viewer told me that this album actually goes for crazy money on Discogs, which is interesting. So it might be worth something, but yeah, it's just one I don't listen to that often, but worth checking out if you're a fan of Europe and melodic hard rock hair metal. So yeah, this is Europe with Start From the Dark, and I think, yeah, it's not a terrible album, just not brilliant for me anyway. All right. Okay, coming up next, another complete change in style. First of all, I'd like to say I have put a disclaimer up about this video, so if you're easily offended by shocking or gory imagery, it's probably time to stop watching now. Anyway, this is Excruciate with Bound and Gagged. So you can probably tell from this rather disturbing cover art that Excruciate is a brutal death metal band. I'm not sure if they're still around anymore, but they were from Queensland, Australia. So the way I discovered this band was they had this festival in Sydney every year called Bloodlust, which was sort of an underground metal festival which featured death metal, black metal, thrash metal, you know, all these local bands. And I discovered a lot of great bands through that festival. So this was one of them. Yeah, so it's extremely brutal death metal, and just describing the style, it's kind of like in the vein of Cannibal Corpse's Tomb of the Mutilated in terms of those like fast, frantic riffs. And the percussion, it's very like blasting and harsh, like a bit abrasive sounding, really. And the vocals, I would say they're kind of slammy in a way, you know, that combination of gargling gravel and a whistling boiling kettle, you know, that, oh, I can't even do it, but yeah, it's a really nice, it's a really good vocal blend actually, which matches the music and the brutality, which is really good. So the only thing for me is I could do without some of these lyrics. Like, you can probably tell Chris Barnes has something to answer for here in terms of the lyrics he wrote for the early Cannibal Corpse albums, you know, about chopping up women. And then some of these bands like Gorgasm and Levidity and this band, they sort of took it upon themselves to write every single song and every album about that. So it's a bit tired and repetitive, that preoccupation to me. And also, I don't like the lyrics are pretty misogynistic, actually. In fact, very. But again, I don't think these lyrics are to be taken seriously. I think like they're done mostly for shock value, and it's almost become an established trend where bands do this as a theme. They're trying to shock and offend listeners. And yeah, with this album, it's certainly no exception. Like, the lyrics are extremely disturbing and offensive. And I know some people go, oh, you're a metalhead, you're not allowed to be offended. Yes, I can be if I want, but yeah, I think that's what they're going for here. But like I said, for me, it's not about the lyrics, it's about the music. They also include some samples from the Australian horror film Wolf Creek, which was based on those, murders committed by that bushman. So it is quite disturbing, maybe a bit too much for me, but musically, it's fantastic. So if you like the music of bands such as, early Cannibal Corpse, as well as like the first 3 albums of Cannibal Corpse, particularly 2 and 3, I think. So, and also Gorgasm, stuff like that. Yeah, you'll probably like this. So for me, it's all about the music. That's what counts. The riffs are really catchy. The guitar tone is great. The drumming is blasting. So it's like this well-oiled grinding machine, and the vocals blend with it perfectly. Yeah, like I said, the other issue I have is I don't like the lyrics generally speaking, but also with the vocal style, you can't actually make out the lyrics, whereas George Corpse Grinder Fisher from Cannibal Corpse, you can hear him clearly enunciating every word. On this, you can't. It sounds like gurgling a lot of the time, but like as an effect, the vocals are very good. So, yeah, as I said, I don't really like the lyrical preoccupation with this band. I won't even read the song titles because some of them are very full on actually. So there's all of the lyrics here, which due to my bad eyesight, I can't read anymore, probably just as well. I could do without that. But yeah, even though it's very brutal, there are some atmospheric and melodic moments on this album. For example, on the song Barbarically Pulpified, and also the last track, And the Heavens Poured with Blood. Yeah, so apart from those 2 songs, it's that normal preoccupation. So like I said, I don't endorse these lyrics and I don't take them very seriously. The music is the most important thing to me. But if you like brutal death metal like early Cannibal Corpse and Gorgasm, you will probably like this. So that's Excruciate with Bound and Gagged. Alright, so coming up next to a classic album that most people are probably very familiar with, so I don't need to say much. This is Exodus with Bonded by Blood. So yeah, you can see first of all, this isn't the original cover art. I got this one in Australia, and yeah, the original one, I don't know which one I like better actually in terms of the cover art, but yes, of course, Exodus, classic American thrash metal. They were sort of considered, they weren't in the big 4, but a lot of people said if there was a big 5, these guys would be part of it. It's just raw, thrashy, yeah, raw and energetic thrash metal, which is really nasty and gritty and dirty. Like Paul Bailoff's voice is very screechy and abrasive, and the riffs are just catchy. Great guitar solos. Just there's nothing to dislike about this album, in my opinion. And it's the only Exodus album I own. My brother's shown me some of the more modern ones, and I like those too, but this one is just a stone cold thrash metal classic. Yeah, so just going through, everyone knows all these songs, but yeah, Bonded by Blood, Exodus. Some of my favorite tracks though, A Lesson in Violence. There's so many vocal moments on this album, like especially with the backing vocals, which are memorable. And I also like the fact that the vocals sound like they're shouted by a group of drunken yobbos down a phone box or something like that, Yeah, so A Lesson in Violence is a great song. Also, yeah, Deliver Us to Evil, that's one of my favorite Exodus tracks. Like, just such a catchy riff in that, brilliant lyrics. Yeah, I love that song. Also, Piranha, that is just an amazing song, a classic Exodus song, one of my favorites. And again, I just love the backing vocals in that song, they make it brilliant. So, just pure raw energy, fast, thrashy, great guitar solos, great screechy vocals. Yeah, so this is absolutely fantastic. Most of you know this, so I don't need to say much more. But if you haven't heard Exodus for some reason, this is a great album to start with. Oh, and there goes the booklet. Yep, so there we go, Exodus with Bonded by Blood, great thrash metal album. All right, now I've got 3 more to go. So I'll just get straight into it. Now moving to some punk. Okay, so this is Exploited with Punk's Not Dead. Now, yeah, this album, I discovered this band in my teens through a friend who really liked punk. He bought this album on vinyl at the time, and I remember I was just blown away. The first song I ever heard was the title track, Punk's Not Dead, on a compilation, and I thought it's very fast and extreme. And then when he played me the vinyl, when I heard the song Mucky Pup and the guitar solo in that, I went, this is brilliant. So Exploited are a legendary UK punk band from Edinburgh, Scotland, led by Iwati, the singer, with the mohawk. He's been the constant member throughout it, but they've had various incarnations. on this album. It's, who is it? Oh yeah, Waddy on vocals, Big John on guitar, Gary on bass, and Drew Sticks on drums. But yeah, just legendary debut punk album. It's very raw, brilliant, and I love just about every song on this. So like Punk's Not Dead, fast and catchy. Mucky Pup, which is a Puncture cover, very good song and brilliant guitar solo in that. Cop Cars, I just love that song, so fun and catchy and frantic. Free Flight has got a like sort of heavy chugging riff, so it slows it down for a bit. Army Life was, I think, one of the first singles they did, like very fast, and like a very fast song, which is great. Blown to Bits, brilliant riff in that, and like Waddy's vocals on the chorus, I just love it. The only song I dislike on this album, people will know, I included it in my video of terrible songs on killer albums. The only song I dislike on this album is Sex and Violence, just because it's slow, boring, and repetitive in my opinion. I know, in a way it's become one of those kind of punk anthems, but for me it does nothing. Also, Total Chaos covered that song, don't know why. But anyway, yeah, so usually with Sex and Violence, I skip that track. But then SPG, another great song, awesome riffing, like Big John was such a brilliant guitarist, like just pumped out these riffs like there was no tomorrow. Royalty is a great song as well, and I like how the chorus in that, it's just Waddy laughing, like ha 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 ha, but like it's so catchy, so you're singing along. Dole Q, catchy as well. Exploited, Barmy Army, a great anthem. Ripper, which was the song about the Yorkshire Ripper, that's quite dark and disturbing, that song. So this band has a variety of atmospheres, even though they're a punk band. Out of Control is a great song, like very repetitive, and it's quite funny. Me and my friends used to always refer to, if someone was too wasted on a certain night, you know, like out drinking too much or something, we used to always sing the lyrics of that song, which is like out of control, on and on. Son of a Copper, good bass lines in that song, and then it concludes with I Believe in Anarchy. So just a great energetic punk album with great backing vocals, great guitars, awesome guitar solos, just everything about this album is great, apart from the song Sex and Violence, in my opinion. So there we go, there's the cover. Okay, and a history of the band, which is cool. And pictures of the band. Yeah, so this is kind of pure punk, and the style changed on later albums, but I'll go into that later. But this is an excellent debut, so The Exploited with Punk's Not Dead. Okay, up next. These are two albums which I have spoken about before in collection updates, so I'm not going to go into them in too much detail. Another Exploited album, this is The Massacre. Yep, fantastic proto-punk thrash album. Excuse me. So this was, by the early 80s, this band started fusing punk with thrash metal, so kind of a crossover album, and I think the combination of punk and thrash metal is so good. It's just pure energy. This album kills. It's just so good. Every single song, just fast, catchy, energetic, and fun. It gets me moving. I love it. And of course, they have those like football hooligan shouted backing vocals, but which make it just so catchy, like brilliant. And just like, again, so many moments that you look forward to on this album. But yeah, some of my favorite tracks on this, the title track, The Massacre, Sick Bastard is so catchy. Yeah, Boys in Blue, brilliant song. Again, catchy chorus in that. Dog Soldier. See, it comes to my head when I just read the song title. Yeah, Don't Pay the Poll Tax is a great song. Also funny lyrics in that, you know, don't pay the poll tax, stick it up your ass. Fuck Religion, of course, great track. About to Die, I love that, you know, with the drumsticks in that. Police Shit is a funny song as well, especially the chorus, Lying Bastards, Police Shit. And yeah, and they also feature some really heavy bonus tracks on this where you hear the bass prominently. So those songs which are really great are Barry Prossett, so heavy, and also Scaling the Derry Wall, brilliant closing track for this album. But yeah, just show you, so there's all of the lyrics here, and cool booklet. Yeah, and that iconic symbol of Exploited. Nice disc as well. Yeah, so just awesome, fun, energetic punk thrash. And look at this, the picture of the band, like with the mohawks. I think the look of punk bands in the UK in the 80s was so cool. Yeah, so brilliant album. Even if you don't like punk, if you like thrash metal, I would recommend checking this out because it has that same drive and energy it's honestly just an awesome album. So great punk crossover thrash, Exploited with The Massacre. Okay, and up next, I have another Exploited album actually, which I have spoken about as well, so I'll just mention this briefly. This is the Exploited with Let's Start a War. I got this, less than a year ago actually, in a bargain bin. But yeah, another great album, like just again punk thrash crossover with some really catchy songs. So if you like The Massacre, it's very similar in style, and again just some energetic, fast, fun, catchy songs. So brilliant. So the full title of this album is Let's Start a War, Said Maggie One Day, referring to Margaret Thatcher starting the war, the Falklands War. And that reminds me, on The Massacre, there's a song, I can't remember which one, but it starts with Maggie, you effing see. So like a very subtle, but yeah, obviously this very anti-establishment, anti-government and so on. So yeah, it makes sense. But some great songs on this. Some of my favorites are Safe Below, that's great. Rival Leaders, God Saved the Queen, not God Save the Queen. That's got like a heavy chugging mid-pace kind of rhythm. Also Psycho, brilliant catchy chorus, like psycho, 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 ah, the shouting, it's really good. And yeah, Wankers, yes, that's the name of the song, really funny and great backing vocals in that song. Also Sing Along a Bushel, which was a song about Gary Bushel, the journalist, saying that punk was dead. So the lyrics in that song go, Gary Bushel said punk was dead, he really must be off his head, wanker. Yeah, classic. And it also includes the EP version of Rival Leaders, which is a great song, even though the chorus, it's not that creative lyrically, like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, here we go. But when you hear it combined with the music, you're just shouting it out. So fantastic album and song. Yep, so again, little brief history about this band. Picture of Margaret Thatcher there, and the cover. And there's the disc. So yes, I think I need to pick up more Exploited albums, because these are the only 3 I own, truth be told. But I know they've released so many more, and I really like their style. They are hands down my favorite punk band, not just of the UK, but in general. So best punk band of all time for me is the Exploited, Let's Start a War, and all of these 3 albums that I've mentioned are excellent, so I've got to check out more. Alright guys, so believe it or not, that's it. Just under half an hour, and I've talked about 8 albums, which is fast for me. So this might be my style for upcoming videos, because I have a lot of one-off kind of releases. So it's probably a good thing to move through things faster, especially because you can just go and listen to the albums as well. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll be back again soon with another black metal vinyl episode. So that's coming up in the near future. I also just want to say that as of lately, I've had a lot of new subscribers. I think partly as a result of joining Threads, but for whatever reason I have. And I just want to say I really appreciate everyone subscribing and continuing to watch. Your support of the channel is what keeps me going, and I've had some really nice comments from people, so I appreciate that, and I hope you guys keep watching. Thanks very much. All right, so that wraps it up for today. I'll be back soon, but in the meantime, take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.